How many times have you promised yourself, "This time, I'll do it right," only to fall again, harder than before? In this video, I'll show you why most people sabotage their recovery before they even start, and how you can rebuild from failure in a way that's stronger, cleaner, and permanent. You'll learn the hidden trap of starting over, the real reason your old habits keep coming back, and a step-by-step plan to rebuild your identity without losing yourself in the process. And at the end of this video, I'll give you a practical 7-day framework that resets everything and puts you back in control. You had the plan. You felt the fire. You swore this time would be different. But then it happened again. The slip, the spiral, the silence. And now you're left staring at the damage, asking yourself, how did I end up here again? Here's the truth no one talks about. Most people don't fall because they're weak. They fall because they never learned how to rebuild. They try to go back to who they were before, instead of becoming who they need to be now. And that's why the cycle never ends. Same habits, same triggers, same crash. But what if this time you didn't just get up? What if you rebuilt differently? Not by pretending the fall didn't happen, not by punishing yourself for failing, but by using it as proof that you're ready for something stronger. Something built with intention, discipline, ownership. This video is not about bouncing back. It's about changing the foundation you stand on, so you never have to fall in the same way again. It's about mastering the rebuild, and this time, doing it from a place of clarity and power instead of shame. So if you're tired of watching your progress collapse after every misstep, if you're done with half-hearted comebacks and emotional resets that never stick, then don't just watch this video. Use it, because this isn't motivation. It's a turning point. Let's begin. You didn't just fall. You started doubting everything you believed about yourself. That's what hurts the most, not the setback, but the identity crack it leaves behind. Because every time you fall, a voice inside whispers, maybe you're not that strong. Maybe you never really changed. Maybe this is who you've always been. That's where the real danger lives. Not in the mistake, but in what you start to believe about yourself afterward. You begin questioning your progress. You stop trusting your word. You lower the bar, not because you want to, but because it feels safer than believing in yourself again and falling once more. And just like that, you're no longer rebuilding, you're retreating. But it doesn't look dramatic. It's quiet, subtle, internal. You still get up. You still go to work. You still say the right things. But deep down, you're different. You're guarded, discouraged, detached from the version of yourself you were trying to become. Because here's what most people don't realize. Every fall creates a negotiation between who you used to be and who you said you wanted to become. And the more times you fall, the easier it is to believe that maybe, just maybe, you're not capable of sustaining the new version. You tell yourself, it's not the right time. I need to figure myself out first. Or the classic, I'll try again on Monday. But underneath all of that is one core belief you haven't confronted yet. You're not sure you deserve to move forward. That belief is poison. It won't scream. It won't argue. It will simply make you slow down, second guess, and slowly drift back into old patterns, until one day you wake up and realize you're back to the version you swore you'd never be again. This is what happens when failure becomes identity. Not an event, not a learning point, but a label you silently accept. And when that happens, you stop rebuilding. You start compensating. You distract yourself with productivity, with overthinking, with justifying, with comparing yourself to people who are doing worse, just so you can feel okay with where you are. You don't need a new morning routine. You don't need another motivational video. You need to understand what actually happened. You didn't lose control. You lost clarity. The fall blurred your vision of who you were becoming. And when the image gets blurry, the actions stop lining up. Because clarity creates direction, and direction gives you discipline. But once you start drifting, even slightly, it becomes easy to let go of the habits, the structure, the voice you were building inside yourself. This is where people fall into the trap of starting over. They wipe the slate clean, delete everything, try to forget the last version. But they never ask the real question. Why did I fall in the first place? Not what triggered you, not what you did wrong, But what part of you still hadn't fully let go of the old identity? Because falling isn't failure, it's feedback. But only if you listen. So before you try to rebuild anything, stop and ask yourself, what story did the fall wake up inside me? What belief did it reinforce? What identity did it drag me back into? This is the invisible damage that keeps you stuck. Not the action, not the setback, but the silent agreement you make with your past the moment you doubt your worth again. You don't rebuild by pretending the fall didn't happen. You rebuild by extracting the lesson and refusing to carry the lie forward. This is where the work begins. Not fixing what broke, but deciding who you are now that it did. That's the shift. That's the rebuild. And in the next step, we're going to talk about the mistake most people make right after they fall, and how it silently guarantees they'll fall again. You're not broken, but you might be building on broken beliefs. Let's fix that. If you're already feeling the weight of that cycle, and you know you don't want to go back there again, hit subscribe now. This isn't just content. It's your structure to rebuild. After a fall, the first instinct most people have is to go back. Back to the last version of themselves that felt stable. Back to the last routine that worked for a while. Back to the last moment where they still believed they were strong. But here's the truth no one wants to hear. You can't go back to who you were, because that version already led you here. Think about that. The habits, the mindset, the structure you had before the fall were never enough to keep you from falling. So why do you believe going back to that same baseline will somehow produce a different result now? It's because we associate the past with safety. Even if it was imperfect, it felt familiar. And when we're hurt, uncertain, or ashamed, we instinctively reach for familiarity, not progress. That's how people get stuck in cycles. Not because they're lazy, not because they lack discipline, but because they keep rebuilding from the same place that broke them before. Let's be clear, starting over is not the same as moving forward. Starting over often means erasing progress, pretending the last version of you didn't happen, resetting all the trackers, the goals, the expectations, and hoping a clean slate will bring new strength. But it doesn't. It just delays the lesson. Because underneath the urge to start over is a deeper belief. If I reset everything, maybe I won't feel like I failed. But erasing failure doesn't make it disappear. It just buries it deeper into your identity, until the next fall pulls it right back out. You don't need to restart. You need to reframe. Reframe what the fall meant. Reframe who you are now. Reframe where you're really standing. Because it's not at the beginning. You're not where you started. Even if you slipped. Even if you spiraled. Even if you lost ground. Because failure doesn't erase growth. It reveals the part of you that still needs work. So instead of going back to day one, ask yourself, what foundation do I still have? What muscle did I build during those weeks or months of consistency? What patterns did I prove I'm capable of? Because that's where you start, not at zero, but at truth. The truth is, you've already changed. Even if you fell, you're not the same person who began this journey. You've seen more. You've tried more. You've overcome more than you give yourself credit for. Going back is a lie that keeps you small, because it says, I have to be who I was before I'm allowed to move forward again. But healing doesn't work that way. Growth doesn't wait for permission. And rebuilding doesn't require a reset. It requires a decision. A decision to accept where you are. A decision to stop romanticizing your past. And a decision to move forward from this exact place, flaws and all. Because here's what matters most. The past version of you tried. This version of you understands. And that understanding is the start of real strength. Not perfection, not performance, but clarity. Clarity about what failed. Clarity about what worked. Clarity about what needs to change, this time for good. That's how you master the rebuild. You stop trying to become who you were and start becoming who you need to be now. And if that feels unfamiliar, good. It should, because building a life you've never had will always feel uncomfortable at first. It's not supposed to feel like home. It's supposed to feel like work. Work that matters. Work that stretches you. Work that reminds you, you're not here to repeat. You're here to transform. So before you throw away your progress, before you restart your streaks, before you delete everything you fell, You felt the pain, and now you're ready to rebuild. But here's the trap. Most people rebuild from the same place that broke them, and they don't even notice it. They rebuild from guilt, from shame, from urgency, from the desperate need to prove that they're still on track. That's not rebuilding. That's performing. And performing under pressure never leads to real transformation. It leads to burnout, self-sabotage, and another crash that hurts even more than the last. Let's talk about it. Most people fall and then immediately try to fix themselves. They overcorrect. They double down. They punish themselves with hyper-discipline, waking up earlier, cutting off every distraction, overloading their schedule with structure. It looks impressive. It feels intense. But it's not sustainable because it's built on fear. Fear of falling again. Fear of what people will think. Fear of not being who they said they were becoming. So instead of rebuilding from a place of clarity, they rebuild from a place of anxiety. And anxiety never creates alignment, only tension. You become tight, defensive, reactive. Every small failure feels massive. Every misstep feels like collapse. Because in your mind, you're not rebuilding. You're racing the clock, trying to undo the fall as fast as possible. But real rebuilds don't come from speed. They come from honest foundation. Here's the truth. If you rebuild just to feel like you're back, you're not healing. You're hiding. Hiding the parts of you that were exposed when you fell. Hiding the doubts, the questions, the emotions you didn't want to face. And what's worse, you might even start blaming the fall for everything, as if the setback itself is the enemy. But the fall wasn't the problem. The way you responded to the fall is what determines whether you stay stuck or evolve. You see, there are two types of rebuilders. The one who rebuilds to prove something, to themselves, to others, to their ego. The one who rebuilds to become something, more grounded, more real, more whole. The first group burns out. The second group breaks through. So ask yourself honestly, are you rebuilding because you're inspired by who you're becoming? Or because you're ashamed of what just happened? Because rebuilding out of shame leads to one thing, another breakdown. Shame pushes you into extremes. It tells you to overcompensate. It demands immediate perfection. And when that perfection isn't met, it confirms the lie that you're not good enough, and you spiral again. This is why it's not enough to start over with a better routine or a new challenge. You have to start with a better reason. You rebuild not to escape your past. You rebuild to integrate it, to understand it, learn from it, and use it to reinforce who you are becoming. So what does that look like? It looks like slowing down instead of rushing, reflecting instead of reacting, choosing one or two powerful changes instead of drowning in a dozen habits you can't sustain. It means asking yourself, what do I need to face right now? What did the fall expose that I still haven't dealt with? What part of me is still trying to perform instead of transform? Because when you rebuild with honesty, you build something solid. Not a version of you that's proving they're okay, but a version that knows they're okay, even while rebuilding. That's the power of self-leadership. You don't just discipline your actions, you discipline your motives. You pause before reacting. You identify the fear before letting it run your day. You stop trying to fix everything at once and start doing the one thing that matters, choosing who you're becoming and acting like it. That's how real progress happens. Not through pressure, not through perfection, through presence. Presence with who you are, presence with what you're carrying, presence with the version of yourself you keep abandoning every time you fall. So if you're ready to rebuild, do it with intention, not urgency, not ego, just clarity. Because this rebuild, it's not about being impressive. It's about being integrated. And in the next step, I'll show you what that rebuild actually looks like, not in theory, but in practice. The mindset, the actions, the small shifts that, over time, create a version of you that doesn't just survive failure, but evolves through it. Let's go deeper. ND, declare you're beginning from scratch. Stop. You're not broken. You're evolving. And that means picking up the pieces, not pretending they were never there. Let's keep going. In the next step, I'll show you how most people approach the rebuild from the wrong angle, and why they sabotage themselves even when their intentions are pure. Because it's not just what you rebuild, it's how you rebuild it. There's a moment after every fall where you have to make a decision, a real one, not a reaction, not a motivational burst, a conscious, deliberate pivot. That's the moment where real transformation begins. Not when you say, "I'll try again." Not when you punish yourself with a harder routine, but when you stop and ask, what kind of person am I rebuilding into? And why does it matter? Because here's the part most people miss. Rebuilding is not about fixing what broke. It's about replacing what never worked. The habits that gave out when life got heavy, they were never strong enough. The version of you that folded under pressure wasn't fully developed yet. And that's not a failure. It's feedback. It's data. It's a gift. But only if you stop running from it. When you rebuild with purpose, you stop copying old routines and start designing new structures. Ones that reflect who you're becoming, not who you're trying to prove something to. That means letting go of strategies that were all about intensity instead of consistency. Letting go of tools that looked good on paper but didn't serve you in real life. Letting go of the obsession with speed and replacing it with strength. Let me give it to you straight. The old version of you? It didn't fail because it was weak. It failed because it wasn't aligned. Aligned with your values. Aligned with your identity. Aligned with your real why. So when you rebuild now, you don't just do more. You do different. Start here. Instead of asking, how fast can I bounce back? Ask, what truth do I need to anchor into this time? Truth is what gives your actions weight. Truth is what keeps you grounded when motivation fades. Truth is what allows you to act with clarity, even on the hard days. That truth might sound like, I don't need to earn my worth through perfection. Or, discipline isn't punishment. It's a commitment to who I said I'd be. Or even, I'm not here to impress anyone. I'm here to become someone I respect. You take that truth and you build around it. Not on shame, not on urgency, on conviction. From there, you build slowly. Not in volume, but in depth. You stop adding 10 new habits overnight and instead master one new standard. You stop relying on streaks and stats and focus on how you show up when no one's watching. You stop trying to catch up and start leading yourself, one honest decision at a time. Here's a powerful shift. Don't rebuild to escape the fall. Rebuild to evolve because of it. Because now you've seen what breaks under pressure. Now you know which habits weren't real. Now you understand what wasn't sustainable. Use that. This is how people actually change. Not with hype, but with intention. They rebuild from identity, not emotion. From vision, not panic. From leadership, not ego. And when you rebuild from that place, something radical happens. You stop fearing another fall, because you've taken the power back. You've turned the fall into a foundation. You've made peace with your past, not by forgetting it, but by building on top of it. And this is where it gets real. Because now, you're not rebuilding from scratch. You're rebuilding from self-awareness. From a level of ownership you didn't have before. From the kind of clarity that only failure can give. So let that fuel you. Not shame. Not guilt. Clarity. Let it shape what you say yes to. Let it guide how you move through resistance. Let it remind you that every time you choose alignment over appearance, you're becoming unshakable. That's the kind of rebuild that lasts. Not flashy, not fast, but rooted, strong, unstoppable. And if you can hold that frame, especially when things feel slow or boring or hard, you'll start to see something shift. Not outside, inside. You'll start showing up differently. You'll start speaking to yourself with more authority. You'll stop negotiating with old habits because they won't even feel like an option anymore. Why? Because you're no longer chasing the past. You're not looking back. You're building forward. One clear step, one aligned action, one rebuilt belief at a time. And in the next step, I'll show you how to deal with the guilt and shame that still tries to pull you down during this process, and how to stop letting it define you. You're not repairing who you were. You're designing who you'll become. Let's keep building. You've made the decision to rebuild. You've shifted your focus from the past to the future. But now comes the hardest part, the part no one talks about. The silence. The silence when the guilt creeps back in. The shame that whispers, you messed up too bad this time. the invisible weight that hangs over your progress, making every step forward feel undeserved. Let's be honest. Most people don't quit because the work is too hard. They quit because they can't bear the voice in their head telling them they're not worthy of rebuilding. You felt it. That moment when you're doing everything right, waking up early, following through, showing up, and yet, something inside keeps pulling you back. Not with words, but with doubt, with heaviness, with the quiet belief that no matter how much you do, you'll never be fully clean from what you did or from who you were. That's guilt. That's shame. And if you don't confront it, it will quietly rebuild your old identity while you're trying to build a new one. Here's what you need to understand. Guilt is not a guide. Shame is not a compass. They might feel like discipline. They might sound like responsibility. But they are traps, emotional traps that keep you looping inside the past even as your body moves toward the future. You can't rebuild a new life while secretly punishing yourself for the old one. Because punishment doesn't lead to progress. It leads to penance. And penance isn't change, it's stagnation disguised as effort. When you're rebuilding, there will be days when the guilt resurfaces. Something small will remind you of your failure. A smell, a song, a conversation, a memory. And suddenly you're there again, not physically, but emotionally. You feel like you're right back at the moment you broke your promise, fell short, gave up. And for a second, you feel like all your progress has been a lie. That moment is the test, not of your discipline, but of your identity. Because how you speak to yourself in that moment determines what happens next. Most people retreat. They go silent. They say, I just need to get through this day. When what they really need is to face what's trying to own them again. So let's face it together. You fell. You made mistakes. You lost time, momentum, maybe even people. But that version of you is no longer in charge. And guilt doesn't get to lead anymore. Shame doesn't get to hold the mic. Because here's the truth. The only reason guilt feels powerful is because you've believed that it's useful. But it's not. Guilt doesn't create change. Ownership does. Shame doesn't build strength. Responsibility does. Guilt says, I failed, so I must be broken. Ownership says, I failed, so I must grow. Shame says, you'll always be this way. Ownership says, that was a moment, not a definition. So when that voice comes up, and it will, don't argue with it. Don't spiral into analysis. Just answer it with clarity. Say to yourself, that was me, but it's not me now. I'm not pretending it didn't happen. I'm proving that it doesn't control me anymore. I'm not perfect. I'm responsible. That's power. Not ignoring the past, but refusing to be imprisoned by it. And yes, you'll have to say it more than once. Because shame is persistent. But so are you. And every time you face it without flinching, you're teaching your nervous system something new. You're safe to rebuild. You don't need to suffer to grow. You don't need to keep bleeding to prove you've healed. You just need to keep showing up, honestly, consistently, and with intention. Because here's what happens when you stop feeding guilt. You get your energy back. You stop wasting time explaining your pain and start using it as fuel. You stop hiding and start leading. And that's what this is really about. This rebuild isn't just for you. It's for the people who will need your strength later. The people who will watch how you carried yourself after the fall, not just during the rise. That's the legacy you're creating. Not a perfect path, a redemptive one. One that says, yes, I failed. Yes, I hurt. But I kept going anyway. And I built something from the wreckage that even I didn't believe was possible. That's the story that lasts. And in the next step, I'll show you how to create that story, not with words, but with actions. Daily, grounded, practical actions that turn your rebuild into a lifestyle, not just a phase. This is where it shifts. From healing to becoming. Let's go. This is where most people stall. They've made the decision to rebuild. They've faced the shame. They've started to see the old patterns. But when it comes to daily action, they freeze. Because it's no longer just emotional, it's practical now. And practical change requires more than motivation. It requires structure. So let's build it. Let's start by clearing one thing up. You don't need a complex system. You don't need to plan your entire year. You don't need to rewrite your whole routine. You need to move with clarity, with simplicity, and with full responsibility. So here's the principle that will guide this entire step. Don't rebuild your life. Rebuild your day. Because your day is your life in miniature. If you can master your day, you can rebuild your future, hour by hour, choice by choice, standard by standard. So how do you do that? Start by identifying the 3 anchors that stabilize you. Not tasks, not achievements. Anchors. The actions that bring you back to who you want to be, even when your emotions drift. For most people, those anchors live in 3 areas. Your mind, what you feed it. Your body, how you move and care for it. Your voice, what you say to yourself about yourself. So here's your rebuild formula. Anchor 1, the mental rewire. Every morning, give your mind direction before the world does. That means no phone, no inbox, no noise first thing. Instead, feed your mind with clarity. Who am I becoming? What matters most today? What is one thing I will not negotiate with? Write it, read it, repeat it. This is not fluff. It's focus. Anchor 2, the physical reset. Your body stores everything: stress, tension, trauma, uncertainty. So move it, release it, respect it. That doesn't mean 2 hours at the gym. It means deliberate action. Stretch, walk, breathe, hydrate. Fuel yourself with discipline. Let your body feel like you're becoming someone strong again, because it will believe whatever you repeatedly do. Anchor 3, the identity declaration. Every day, speak to yourself with leadership. Catch the doubt. Interrupt the shame. Direct your inner voice with clarity. Tell yourself what's true, even before it feels real. I'm not starting over. I'm continuing stronger. I'm not perfect, but I'm solid. I don't need to prove anything. I need to stay aligned. You say it until you believe it. You believe it until you live it. Those are your anchors. Simple, repeatable, foundational. But anchors aren't enough without alignment. So now we add the next layer, your decisions. Here's the truth. Every decision you make is either a deposit into your new identity or a withdrawal back into the old one. So stop asking, what should I do today? Start asking, what would the version of me I'm becoming do today? That one question will transform your discipline. Because now it's not about pressure. It's about integrity. You don't brush your teeth to impress anyone. You do it because that's who you are. Apply that same principle to your rebuild. Make the new actions part of your identity, not just your checklist. And yes, you'll slip. You'll forget. You'll want to give in some days. But that's where the real work begins. Not in how perfect you are, but in how quickly you return to alignment. Because consistency isn't about never failing. It's about never going so far that you lose who you are. So here's your rebuild structure, the non-negotiables. Morning direction, you tell your mind where to go. Physical grounding, you treat your body like a leader. Identity language, you speak like the person you're becoming. Aligned decisions, you act from vision, not emotion. Daily review, at night, ask, did I live in alignment today? Not perfect, aligned. If yes, you affirm it. If no, you reset, without shame. That's the cycle. Not start, sprint, crash. But lead, adjust, repeat. You don't need fire every day. You need structure. You don't need to impress yourself. You need to stay consistent with who you said you'd become. And the more you honor this process, the more you rebuild your trust in yourself. And that, more than any routine, is what will keep you from falling again. Because now you're not depending on motivation. You're not reacting to failure. You're building forward with clarity and a system that holds when your emotions don't. And in the final step, I'll show you how to lock this all in. How to turn this rebuild into a non-negotiable way of living, even when life tests you again. Because the real goal isn't just to rebuild once. It's to become someone who never needs to start over again. Let's finish this strong. You made it here, and that means something. Not because you watched a video, but because you stayed. You faced your patterns. You named your fall. And you chose to rebuild, not with emotion, but with intention. That puts you in a category few people reach. Because most people don't finish what they start. They get stuck in the shame. They get lost in the noise. They build with urgency, And when the pressure fades, so does their discipline. But not you. You've seen too much now. You've faced too much now. You've gone too far to pretend this doesn't matter. And that's the power of this moment. Because here's what no one tells you. You don't just rebuild a new life. You become someone who no longer tolerates the old one. Someone who no longer waits for permission. Who no longer flinches at failure. Who no longer lets guilt write the script. Someone who doesn't run from the wreckage, but builds a foundation on top of it. You are that someone now. Not because you said the right things, but because you've done the work that no one sees. The quiet, unglamorous, inner work that builds strength from the inside out. And that's what makes you dangerous, in the best way. Because a person who's rebuilt themselves, not out of desperation, but out of clarity, can't be broken the same way again. Not because life gets easier, but because you got stronger. So now, the only question left is, will you live like it? Will you wake up tomorrow and protect what you've rebuilt? Will you speak to yourself with the same fire you're building with? Will you lead your day, not follow it? This is your line in the sand. Not a dramatic, emotional high, but a clear, steady decision. I'm not who I was. I'm not going back. And from this point on, I rebuild forward, no matter what. Let that become your standard. Not just today, not just this week, but every time life pulls at you, every time the old self knocks, every time the voices come back. Because the person you're becoming is already inside you. You just proved it. And if this message didn't just make you think, but made you decide, then this space is yours. Hit subscribe right now, not as a gesture, but as a commitment. To rebuild with integrity. To lead yourself daily. To never lose what you just found. Here, you don't rebuild alone. You rebuild with clarity, with structure, with identity. And the next time life tests you, you'll be ready, because you've been through the fall. And this time, you didn't just get up, you rebuilt.